Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Generally Irritable, this Thursday edition, bright and early. You know, figuring out what time to do my show is actually harder than you might think. Part of the reason is because there's a few YouTubers and podcasters that I really like, and their show airs at the time when I would like to have my show. So we're trying this morning thing out. Make sure to comment below. Tell me what you guys think. Do you like mornings? Do you like evenings? Do you like afternoons? I've discovered that I'm torturing my guests. The one thing about doing morning shows is I'm torturing my guests that are in states like California because they have to get up super duper early. Like my guest today, congressional candidate David Serpa. Now, you guys might be thinking, hey, Erica, that name sounds familiar. Why is that name familiar? And it would be because David had the absolute most based takes, most based clips from our America Fest 2023 visit this year. You guys probably remember the interview that we did with him at America Fest this year. Just throwing haymakers like this at politicians and the government and people. I loved it. And I really wanted to have him back so we could get an update on how his congressional campaign is going. So David is, I believe it is District 39 in California. He's going to correct me when he comes on, when he joins us in just a moment. But he's running for Congress out in California. And I really want to know what he thinks. Do Californians think that California is doomed forever? See, I don't think it is. I want to believe that Californians will pull themselves up, figure out that all of the crime and homelessness and power outages and all of the like third world country problems that they're dealing with, that they'll start to recognize that it's actually Gruesome Newsom's fault, that it's actually the government's fault, and that they need to cut it out. So we're going to talk to David. We're going to get an update on his campaign. We're going to ask him how his mom is doing. I got to meet his mom. She was there with him, you guys. How freaking cool is that? Imagine being a parent and being so proud that you get to walk around with your son, former U.S. Marine Corps, by the way. You know, this guy is he's not just getting up there and being like, I think people are stupid and I want to this man has given his life for this country. He's worked hard. He knows what's up. He loves his family. I mean, seriously, guys, if you're good to your mom, if you see somebody being good to their mom, you kind of know that they're probably a decent person. I think you can start there. Let's just say that's the start of my pitch for David Serpa for Congress. So without any further ado, let's bring in David. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Erica, it's awesome to be back, my friend. I'm so glad to be here. You're hilarious.
Oh,
and people are stupid, but that's okay.
I'm stupid. See, that's the thing. People don't understand that when I insult people, that I'm including myself in that.
100%. I talk about, how we've got, oh, this person, he's mentally ill, or whatever. And, I'm always throwing haymakers. And then somebody will be, hey, I'm mentally ill. But I know I'm mentally ill. Like at some point or another, people just need to realize, hey, listen, maybe you don't know everything, and that's okay. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, and speaking of politicians, Jessica Gonzalez is joining us this morning. Good morning, Jessica. She is a city councilor here in Texas, in Killeen, where we got Fort Hood. Actually, it's not Fort Hood anymore because we can't call things what they're called anymore. It's Fort Cavazos.
Yeah. Had to change the name to go ahead and clean up that Google search history for everything that was going on in Fort Hood.
So, you know what? Speaking of which, who do you know besides Jesus that is like all good or all bad?
Correct. Well, there's a little bit of duality in everything. And of course, actually my sister flew out to Fort Hood a few years ago when a lot of was it Vanessa Guillen? Is that who it was that was killed out there? And but so my
Oh,
sister flew out there. My sister's a pretty radical person as well, another combat veteran. And hey, there are problems everywhere. Like you said, everyone has problems and whatnot. And I'm certainly not, they're good people everywhere as well. You know what I mean? But everyone is so concerned about their own dark history, their own shadows in their past, that a lot of people don't run for office that should be running for office. They don't, start their life when they should be starting their life because they're afraid of something in their past that
yeah.
defines them. And
Yep.
it doesn't define you. A lot of your trauma shapes what you're capable of because it bonds us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Armor bonds us.
that's interestingly enough, David. We were talking, you guys, before we started the show and we were just getting warmed up. I didn't realize I hadn't shared with David before that I also ran for Congress. And so I celebrated 15 years in recovery this year from alcohol and drug abuse. And
Wow.
I made that a central point of my campaign
Yes.
because
Good for you.
Vermont has the highest rate of drug abuse in the country, saw the
Mm,
highest increase in overdoses
wow.
and suicides in the country.
Mhm,
And it was
mhm.
like, if we can't talk honestly about what is causing the literal destruction of the people of my state, then what's the point?
100%. We talk about how we have to destigmatize mental health. We need to destigmatize addiction. And
Hmm.
then the second that somebody wants to run for office or wants to get involved in their community, we look at their past. And if we see addiction or mental health issues or, a checkered past, we want to discount them. But,
Yep.
that's part of, being a Christian is understanding redemption and understanding,
Mm,
of course, that Christ is my redeemer and has helped me to feel whole again. But when you look at that pain, like post traumatic growth, post traumatic stress
mm,
disorder, addiction,
yep.
alcoholism, homelessness, a lot of these things where we are struggling,
Hmm.
um, we a lot of times we think that we're alone until we
Yeah.
pick up a book or we listen to a podcast or we hear
Yep.
somebody that we admire talking about their struggles from their past.
Yep.
And I've told everybody, I checked myself into the VA and I think January or February of 2018.
Hmm.
And I walked in wondering what was wrong with me. And I walked out with the list of things that were wrong with me and a bag full of medication. And that's, I'm autistic, bipolar 2. But a lot of these labels help me to understand things about myself.
Yeah.
Like I will work myself until I am sick. I will work
Mm,
18, 20-hour days. I'll stop sleeping. I'll stop eating. And the next thing you know, my body starts failing. And so
mm,
maintaining a healthy sleep schedule is
hmm.
very important, very critical for a lot of this kind of stuff. What is
So
addiction other than
is
pain?
is is that is that sort of, so okay, so backing up, hold on. It's
Mhm.
interesting that you're sharing that. Like, I'll keep working and I won't stop basically till I'm done or I make myself sick or whatever. Do you think that comes from do they say that comes from like the autism or whatever? Or do you think that that was inculcated into you in the Marine Corps or both?
I think it's a lot of things. I think that, being autistic, gives me the ability to hyper focus for long periods of time. And bipolar 2 gives me
Mm,
the ability to be very manic when I'm passionate about something. And
okay.
so, I could work for 18 to 20 hours a day, like I said, while being very hyper focused because of being autistic. And then also, a lot of trauma in my childhood that keeps
Mm,
me driving so that I can start solving some of these problems
yep.
because people talk about how trauma is such a bad thing and that if you're acting on trauma that's a bad thing, but if your trauma is preventing other people from potentially being traumatized or helping them out of their trauma, isn't that a good thing to act on that? And I
Well,
think that it is.
that's the whole thing, right? The Bible says he turns all things for those who love. I'm gonna totally butcher it, but the gist of the scripture is Christ will do all things uh for us, right? Anything bad is
Mhm,
going to be turned to good. He's going to use it to strengthen us. He's going to make it part of our ministry or whatever. I
mhm,
totally cannot remember the scripture right now, but that's the point of it, right? If all
mhm,
we do, if we have trauma or we're victimized, and then that becomes our identity, and
mhm,
that's all, and oh, I'm just gonna feel sorry for myself, and oh, self pity is, it's real comfortable. I'm a big
mhm.
fan of
Well,
self pity,
That's
personally.
the narrative that they want you to buy because if you check out and if you start thinking about all of the problems that are wrong with you instead of all the
Mm,
problems that are wrong with society that are bringing out all of these mental illnesses in people to a place where they can not cope, then you're disengaged and you're checked out. And so I want people to be to look at their mental illness and be like, okay, well, I understand that I'm struggling mentally. I understand that this is how I'm wired or whatnot, and this is my playbook. This is my guidebook for how I'm wired. But what is
yes.
it about society that has changed so drastically in the last 15, 20 years that now so many people are overwhelmed, overstimulated, depressed, and anxious?
And that's, oh my God, that is such a good. Can you say that again? Why so many people are overwhelmed,
Why so many people
overtaxed, and
are
anxious?
overwhelmed, have
The-
anxiety, why they're depressed, because the thing is I believe that mental illness in a lot of ways, our brain has a lot of neuroelasticity. We're able to
mm.
sort of come back from trauma. We can bounce
Mm.
back.
So
But
neuroelasticity is like you may learn one way of being, but you can unlearn and relearn something else.
yeah, we're
That
adaptable. Our brain is incredible. And so, but what happens is when you stress a brain so many times, all these little rubber bands that are sort of connecting everything and keeping you balanced, they start snapping, they start breaking.
mm,
And it takes time to repair when you are constantly traumatized, when you are trivialized, when you have difficulty feeding yourselves, feeding your family, trying to decide if you can afford to start a family. And the American dream has been for sale to the highest bidder, and we're wondering why our youth is struggling.
ooh, okay. I'm gonna. I was about to take us down a totally different path.
You could
We
go
might
anywhere
come
you want to
back to
go, my
this.
friend.
I am so because I think this is so important, and because I feel like the American people are just okay. If we take out uh um uh I don't know what the right word is to use, but say like personal trauma, right? Like
Mhm.
I was abused, I was hurt somehow, like something personally happened to me, right? So there's personal trauma. But then I kind of look at the landscape right now and I see, I mean, literally all I have to do is open a social media app and I see people beating each other. Why am I able to see video of people being murdered without having to go seek it out myself? It's just in my feed. And I
Mhm.
more than once a day when I have to get engaged with social media because it's part of my job here, I feel traumatized by the freaking crap I see.
Yeah, and the truth is I had to check out for a few years. I got
Mm,
back from Afghanistan and had a violent deployment, but I jumped into business but I just disengaged from politics. I disengaged from the world. I didn't vote for 10 years. I just was done. And so
mm,
now I look at it and I look at the social media and I'm telling you, it is overwhelming. It is, it's very easy to be overstimulated when you're logging in and it's hatred, it's death, it's war. And so why do I have to, open up my phone and see some guy setting himself on fire
I
or,
the,
or see children dying throughout the world in Gaza and Haiti and,
this is what I'm saying. Why you it used to be that you couldn't put that stuff on television. It was deemed inappropriate.
But in my opinion, I am glad that that is out there, that that information is out there.
Okay.
I'm because it is stirring people up, and we have to
Mm,
be stirred up. We have to be disturbed to a point to where we are angry enough to get involved, because we are an
mm.
apathetic nation, and we
Ooh,
are not only are we apathetic to
preach.
what's happening on the other side of the world. We're apathetic to what's happening in our communities. And when I tell people, hey, listen, your neighbor's not your enemy. You know what I mean? All charity doesn't need to be found in Mexico. There are people that are in your community that are hungry, that are
Yeah.
hurting, that are housing insecure. And it's you don't have to look far. It's not just veterans that are struggling right now with PTSD. It's your 16-year-old neighbor who can't handle going to school anymore because she's being traumatized at school. I mean, like we have pushed our children into such a stressful thing here at school because we as parents are unwilling to suffer the slings and arrows of moral authority of saying this is wrong and this is right. And so we're pushing the onus on our children,
Mm,
and they're being forced to deal with adult issues that they should not be dealing with, and their schools have become a political war zone
That's right.
instead of them becoming a place of learning.
Yeah.
And so I'm very disappointed in the education structure. I'm very disappointed that they didn't only move the goalpost. It seems like they introduced entirely new goalpost.
Yes.
If we don't educate, we incarcerate. And America leads the world in incarceration. We don't lead the world in education. And so our children are not having any opportunities in their communities. And they're seeing that there's no hope for the future. And so no wonder people are breaking, they're disturbed. Fentanyl's the number one killer of
Yep.
people in my age group, 18 to 45. Suicide is skyrocketing in all age groups and genders.
Yep.
Credit card debt is at an all-time high.
Yep.
Delinquencies are at an all-time high, even though FHA still has them on a freeze. So there's a lot of band-aids that we've been slapping on the economy, and when we need a tourniquet, and at some point or another, we are going to bleed out.
Oh my god. So, what was the thing you just said about the FHA? Wait, hold
So
on.
the
Hang on. Wait, hang on.
Mhm.
Okay. Keep that in mind, you guys, David. So just before I forget, I want to make sure you guys know, and we're going to include all of these links in the description and in a pinned comment. But David, as we said, is running for Congress. So I want to make sure you guys see his website, see what he's got going on. Do. Okay, so you can go to David Serpa for Congress, SERPA.com. Oops, I'm supposed to hide my bookmarks bar. Whoop.
Let's see what you've been up to.
It's all business stuff for my accounting practice. All right, so you got your website here. Love this picture, by the way. This is
Thank you.
totally like, this reminds me of like 50s, 60s era posters. I love it. I love it. Join the
I have a shirt on
team.
today. Yep.
You guys, who's all this? The Great Republican Rally.
I'm really excited to tell you about that, actually. So this is and there's actually more speakers that have been added. So
Ooh.
you said something really interesting before we got on the show about the reason why Republicans don't get elected is because of other Republicans and all of the infighting. And you
Yes.
absolutely nailed that. We,
Yep.
as Republicans, need to take a page out of the Democratic Party playbook and coalesce behind our candidates, work together,
Yes.
phone bank, door knock, and ballot harvest. And if we do those three things, and if we beat the Democrats at their own game, because you don't have a bunch of Democrats out knocking on doors and phone banking and ballot harvesting that aren't getting paid.
Yeah.
But we, as the party of business people, as the party of entrepreneurs, nonprofits, churches, tell me that we could now organize the Democratic Party and beat them at their own game. Step up our massive ballot harvesting campaign, get
Yep.
people to register to vote. We knocked 19,000 doors in the primary. I think we could quadruple that in the next 200 days. So we have over 70 volunteers. I have, about 10 people around me that are also big chiefs that are all volunteers that are coordinating the other volunteers. And so I'm really fortunate. But on this picture right here, we have the presidents of Stand Up Riverside, the president of the Redlands Tea Party Patriot, the president of Riverside Republican Assembly, of the Lincoln Club, of East Valley Coachella Republican Women's, of the Civil Review Board, the president of Riverside Republican Women Federated. We have the chair of the local Republican Party, plus the vice chair for the state, who's going to be flying down. We have Assemblyman
Fantastic.
Bill Asaley, plus congressional candidates Ian Weeks, Mike Cargile, and myself. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to get all of the people that are running for Assembly, for Senate, for school board, for just all of these different seats out to my rally. We're
All
going
right.
to charge people $25. And we're going to have media, merchants, all sorts of booths for people to visit. And the tickets are for sale on my website at
Yep.
davidserpaforcongress.com. And they are also for sale on makecaliforniagreatagain2024.com.
Okay, so is that on, let's see, would that be under donate?
So it's right there on the page that you were at, the home page. And then you could just scroll down right there. It says get tickets. Go down a little bit more.
Purchase tickets right here. All right. Excellent.
Tickets only $25.
That is, you know what? That is a pittance to help save your state. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
$25. If you can't come up with $25, let's talk about it.
Hey,
Let's
listen,
talk
I
about it.
mean, like, I understand. I don't want to look down on anybody for not being able to come up with $25. Like, I get where you're coming from. Like, but yeah, let's talk about it, because the difficulty is if it's $25 holding you back, and you want to get out there and meet other Republicans, Republican clubs, and Republican candidates and get plugged in,
Then
I'm
come
telling you what,
volunteer.
yeah,
Oh,
come
sorry for
volunteer.
interrupting.
I am no, that you're absolutely 100% dead right. The difficult thing is volunteering isn't just volunteering anymore. It essentially costs you money to get in the car and drive out and be a part of anything that you are
Mm,
doing.
yeah.
And so if someone's willing to give me $25 or $20 or $15 or $5, I'm so grateful for that. I'm driving Uber right now, homie. Do you get what I'm saying?
That's
Like
what I'm saying.
in addition to my Marine Corps retirement, which if you, as far as I'm concerned, if you're a retired veteran, you and your spouse should not be working. Like, you guys should be freaking able, you should be able to retire. It should be optional, right? But I am working Uber. My wife is a public school teacher. She's a substitute.
Oh,
And then in
goodness.
addition to that, now she's looking at taking out applications to wait tables. And that feels humiliating for me. I feel like I'm, not being a good provider, like I'm not being a good man, not being a good husband or a good father.
Yeah,
And
but
when I
you're
look
running
at,
for office.
well, correct. But when I talk to other men out there, they're
Mm,
all suffering from the same thing. I talk to other women. I'm
mm,
working two jobs. My husband's working two jobs. We're both involved in the gig economy. I'm a small business owner, or I lost my job during COVID, or I lost my business during COVID. And so, during COVID, a new billionaire was created every day, while the middle
what?
class, yeah, during COVID, a new billionaire was created every day. And if you look at it, and the middle class also lost about $1 million in wealth every day, $1 billion in wealth every day during COVID. And so it was the massive, the largest wealth transfer of wealth in American history, and it directly benefited the top 1%.
That is, I don't think people generally, I consider myself very plugged in, obviously.
Mhm,
I didn't even know that. I hadn't heard that
mhm.
statistic. I mean, I
Yeah, it's
knew that it was
wild.
bad, but I think something like 25% of the businesses, this statistic is old, so forgive me for those of you watching. It could be different now, but I
Mhm.
believe it was something like 25% of Vermont businesses either fully closed or had to like either like went out of business or were severely harmed and like irreparably damaged from the
Mhm.
shutdown.
And here are the numbers nationally. So 40% of Black businesses went out of business permanently during COVID. 40%. And that is an unforgivable number as far as I'm concerned. And people say, well, why do you specifically mention Black businesses? Well, race is the cousin of economics, and they're going to try things in Black communities before they're going to try them in white communities, just like they're shutting down elementary schools
Well, and
because of the immigration.
it's
And
also
where are they
one of
doing
the
that?
things that's the that the but that's who they say they care about. That's who
Hmm.
they say matters. Oh,
Hmm.
we care so much about
Well,
black people. We care so much
and
about minorities and the whatever. And then you
so
hurt
during a
them
natural
worse.
100%, and during a natural disaster, about 40% of businesses typically close and never reopen their doors. So what you had during COVID-19 was you had a nationally inflicted uh, disaster
Yeah.
that correlates directly with FEMA numbers, with communities not being able to recover. And what happens when those mom and pop shops don't reopen? They are replaced
Wow.
by chains that are franchises that are designed to bleed communities of their wealth and resources, that have DEI scores, that are publicly traded companies that are owned by Blackstone, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
Yep.
And that is it is an economic agenda.
And you can see it too. This is the great thing about publicly owned businesses is you can see who owns them. And those
Mhm.
four businesses you just named are are primarily responsible for the nonsense that we are seeing.
Mhm.
Oh, you want investment money? Oh, you want our money? Well, then you're
Mhm.
going to do what we say. You're going to
That's right.
be racist, sexist, homophobes, which is
Mhm.
really basically like they become the istophobes that they claim we are.
Well, that's right. And unfortunately, what's happened with these scores and with these companies is, we instead of developing class allegiance,
Hmm.
we look at these scores, and we look at the people, and then we say, oh, well, that gay guy, the LGBTQ community, the Hispanic, the black guy, the woman, they must not be qualified, or they shouldn't be making that much money, or they shouldn't have had their minimum wage increase, or they shouldn't be starting a union. And I'm like, brother, those are not your enemies. It is absolutely about class warfare at this point. It is the lower and middle class. And honestly, if you think you're upper class and you don't have a yacht, you're not one of them. It is the have nots versus have yachts. And you're over there thinking that you're an Elon Musk. You're not an Elon Musk, homeboy. Just because
Yeah.
you're sitting a little bit comfortably right now doesn't
Yep.
mean that they're not comfortable or coming for you next. And that's what's happening. And
Yeah.
so I would love to see a little bit more of a unionization push.
Yeah.
I'm not an anti-union person. I look at the history of unions, and I look at that unions have been hijacked in the same way our government was hijacked, and they
Yeah.
have to be checked from within in the same way that our government has to be checked from within.
Yeah.
And I am in the largest concentration of warehouses anywhere in the world. That's the Inland Empire. We have so many warehouses. And I'm like, you know how you strike back against Amazon, Target, Walmart, Starbucks, McDonald's, all these companies that are owned by BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard? You unionize.
Mm.
And if they can't afford to start paying people a living wage, then they go under. And that's fine with me too. And then Main Street returns. So, but don't tell me that they can't afford to pay it when I look at the way that these franchises are structured and that they bleed communities of that franchise fee. 8% to 11% typically leaves the
Yeah.
community off the top. These people, they own the real estate, and then they're more beholden to their stock owners than they are to their employees.
I have to tell you, so I have an accounting practice, bookkeeping practice that I created an internship program. It's a small business incubator for women who want to be stay-at-home moms or homeschool their kids to learn how to do bookkeeping from home so they can have a stay-at-home business.
I love
And
it.
so I was looking at franchising it. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, it can be, they can come, they get trained, and then they can buy a franchise or whatever, right? I'm not gonna lie. When I started looking into franchising, I was like, I wouldn't even feel comfortable with this. Like,
Yeah.
so you have to pay me tens of thousands of dollars. Now, obviously, I could make whatever terms I want. But when I
Mhm.
started looking at different franchises, I'm like, so you pay tens of thousands of dollars in a franchise fee. So before you even opened the door, you're in $50,000 worth
Yeah.
of debt.
Mhm.
And then it takes 3 to 5 years to really be profitable and successful. But in the meantime, you have to give me 10 to 15% of your earnings
Yeah, no, absolutely.
on
And
top
so
of taxes and everything else. Sorry, go,
on
go.
top of taxes and everything else. And so the difficult thing is with all these franchise model worked for years. From the 60s to the
Mm,
90s, I feel like the franchise model worked. And it served both the franchise, the owners, plus the people that were starting these franchises are typically they were homeowners in your community, but
correct. Yep.
now you go into these franchises and there's nobody in there that's a homeowner. There's nobody in there that's sending their kids to college. How many people are retiring from
It might.
Starbucks or McDonald's or Target or Walmart or
Yep. And
Amazon?
it might not even be owned by someone in your community. It might be owned by some
Correct.
rando in another state or country.
Yeah, correct. And maybe they own 30 or 40 of these or 120 of these. And the truth is the smaller franchise owners right now are also being bought out by the larger franchise owners. And so this game of Monopoly that we are playing, like the chips, the everything is all going to one place, and it's going to the point to where one group of people, two groups of people are going to own
Everything.
95% of everything. And it's that whole you will own nothing and be happy. It's like, okay, you own everything and you're still not happy. Why are you so pissed off? Give these people the freaking capitalism trophy and be like, all right, hey, you win. Now go pick up basket weaving or something. Go pick up tennis. Learn
I
to play a
love it.
musical instrument.
Speaking of which, you got that piano behind you. I told him, guys, we were gonna make him play a song for us. But so Susie Seymour, good morning to you as well. And Lord Benjamin Reddick says hello.
Lord Benjamin. Good morning, my
Yes.
brother.
He normally would be with us this morning for an interview like this. You were one of our favorite interviews at AmericaFest.
Thank
Don't
you.
tell our other guests because
I
we don't
won't
want to
tell
make them
anyone.
jealous.
It was a blast. It was a good time.
But he was on set yesterday from literally sun up to sundown, and he was fighting and outside in the heat and everything. So he's exhausted today.
Get paid,
Uh,
my friend. Do what you got to do.
yeah, we're really excited. We have a lot of surprises coming up this year for people, so it's going to be exciting. Okay, so now for those of you who are watching, make sure you like this video, share this video, subscribe to our channel, and definitely go check out David Serpa, Serpa. He's on Twitter. I saw you've got Twitter. You've got all the social medias, right?
I have all the social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn, but not, I'm not busy on LinkedIn.
I know.
I'm on
Yeah,
Rumble.
on
I'm on
LinkedIn.
Truth.
Okay.
And so I'm everywhere. And then we're also, I have about 272 videos I'm getting ready to release, but don't tell anyone just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do about 3 a day. It's going to be very hard to keep up with me. But I've
Cool.
spent the last 6 weeks just in the editing booth, just editing videos.
Yep. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. So let's talk specifically about California. So I think I said
Yes.
District 39. Was that correct?
And you were right. That's right.
Okay. And
That's
so where in,
Riverside, Paris, Harupa
okay.
Valley, and Moreno Valley. It's like northwest Riverside County.
Okay. So if I don't know California, what is that close to?
So you've got LA, San
Mm.
Diego, and then an hour away from each of those, kind of in between and inland, is the Inland Empire. And that's why we are such a concentration of warehouses, because we are a shipping hub,
Yeah.
because we ship out to Vegas. So you got to drive through our area to drive out to Vegas, and then to LA, and then down to San Diego. And so there's a lot of opportunities for economic development. But unfortunately, instead of seeing really good jobs coming into our community, we're seeing an abundance of warehouse jobs. And those warehouse jobs pay, $19,000, $20,000 a year typically. There's not a lot of opportunity for people to level up. And then what happens is you need about $100,000 a year to buy a house in my area.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you would need like 4 or 5 people married.
See,
We're going to have to make polygamy legal just so that we can
this
bring
is
back homeownership.
this is what I'm saying. This is what I don't so Vermont is dealing with something very similar, where
Mhm.
basically let me back up. Do you think that the cost is artificially inflated, or do you think it's reasonable? So let me set you up with this. So Vermont used to be a very reasonably priced place to live. Then we had a bunch of people from New Jersey and New York and Connecticut move there, buy up a piece of property. Vermont has the most number of vacation homes in the country. Like, so there are per actual person living in it versus second home. We have the worst rate in the country. So you have a bunch of houses that are going basically, that are empty. So it changes the, like the number of houses. I'm trying to think of the right word to use. And changing the inventory affects the price, right? So inventory availability changes the price. They made it impossible to build anywhere because, the environment. And so there's all these things that contributed to making it unaffordable. And now it's either the poor people who are supported by welfare or social security or, pensions, or the ultra rich, and the middle class is just left and been gutted. And I feel like when I lived in California, it was very much the same way. It was the rich elite and the poor who serve them.
So what we're describing right now is called gentrification. And it's something that the
Okay.
Black community has been dealing with for years, right?
Yeah.
Or that
Yeah. So
the
it doesn't have to be a race thing, right? Vermont's all white people filled up with a
correct.
bunch more white people. Okay.
But what you have is you have, like I tell people, new names for an old noose. And so this is something that they use to economically control us. We are serfs. We are wage slaves. We are sharecroppers. And I can make that a very simple case. You don't own your home. You don't own the land that that home sits on. You don't own your business. And so, if you don't own those three things, and we know that freedom is economic freedom, are you free? And my argument would be that no, you are not free. You are a wage slave. You are a sharecropper. You are a Russian serf. And so, what we need to do is there are four things that we need to do essentially to make housing affordable again. We need to build affordable housing. That's the first one. We need to build affordable housing and not high density housing where we're all on top of each other and it goes four
Hmm.
levels up and there's a business down at the bottom. We
Hmm.
need to build 1,000 to 1,200 square foot, 2 to 3 bedroom homes that are starter homes
Hmm.
that give people an opportunity to bridge into the middle class, give them something to own. Nobody wants to wash a rental car. So people need
Hmm.
ownership, and that's the American dream anyway, right? And so
Yeah.
build affordable homes. Two is you got to get the EPA out. You got to get rid of the
Mm.
Environmental Protection Agency because they've become a Gestapo that you have to pay off in order to develop. So I would evict the EPA. And then you need to get localities, both the government out of the way so that they're not becoming another Gestapo, where it's like you need to
Mm.
develop these roads in order to build. And then adding all these builder costs to where builders are like, okay, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to build in
Mm.
California anymore.
Yeah.
And then also activate the localities in the church sense and the nonprofit sense. I think, like in my area, there's about 3,000 churches in Riverside County. If we really wanted to, we could build 4 Conestoga huts on every church parking lot. We could manage these facilities and make it possible so that we could end homelessness essentially overnight. Because isn't that what we are called to
Mm.
do? Is to look after the widows, look after the
Yes.
orphans, be the hands and feet. And so I think that it would give the church a very big boost if we started doing things like ending homelessness or providing
Hmm.
child care for parents. And then the last thing is we have to activate a shelter first initiative that basically not only provides shelter on public land where there are facilities available, but also destigmatizes mental health and builds mental health facilities
Hmm.
because there are people that are struggling. And if we destigmatize the mental health facility and made it so that people could go in on their own
Yeah.
accord and check themselves in and stop making it look like it is a terrible thing, but it's a place to go get reset in a
Yeah.
world that is designed to burn you out, tap you out, and tax you out. And I would love an opportunity to be able to do these basic things for people so that they could see a way out of the
Yeah.
dark time that they are in their life, and they don't decide to self-eliminate, but decide to, uh, get up, dust themselves up. You can't pull yourself up by your bootstrap. It's not
Yeah.
possible.
It's
That's
it's
a
a really
joke.
cute it's a really cute saying to try to
Very
prove a
cute.
point, but
Yes.
in reality, it, you know, I think everyone who has I think most people who have come back from, a mental illness or drug addiction or whatever it is, like for me, I will say even though I went to jail for what I
Mhm.
did and
Mhm.
and suffered a bunch of consequences, um, that didn't keep me sober. It kept me from behaving as badly as I could have, but the
Mhm.
real change in my life happened when a woman who knew me gave me a job in my field. She knew me before I was a drug addict and she knew me
Mhm.
after. And she said, I know that this is not you. And I want to
Mhm.
give you a second chance at your career. Would you like to come work for me being an accountant? And
Mhm.
it was that I remember, like, I think I drank for maybe a few more months after getting hired or for a little while, but I went on a bender and I
Mhm.
woke up the next day and I was like, someone has actually risked their own reputation for me.
Mhm.
And I've been given a second chance at my life. And I
Mhm.
cannot mess this up. I
Yeah.
cannot mess this up. I will not mess. I'm not going to hurt. Her name was Colleen. I was like, I'm not going to hurt Colleen. I'm not going to hurt her clients. I'm not going to hurt
Mhm.
myself anymore. And her pouring into me like that, um, really was a big part of the turning point where I gave it up.
Mhm.
And so if we continue to say, and this is part of the problem, in my opinion, with things like welfare and government assistance, not that they don't have their place. I definitely got to take advantage of them at certain points in my life. But
Mhm.
if people don't, if people think that the government is going to go save everyone, then they go, okay, I'm done. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be responsible for my neighbor. I don't have to be responsible for my community because I paid my taxes and it's somebody else's job to do that.
Mhm. No, I agree with you. So I went and I'm meeting with everybody. So I went and I met with the libertarians over the weekend,
Yeah.
and I love me some libertarians. I used to be one, you know what I mean? But like, you look at it, and anything that I would bring up where I'm like, hey, listen, government needs to work. It's no longer an option for government not to work. We have to audit. We have to hold them accountable. We have to make sure that we're getting results for the things that we are paying for. There's kind of a tendency to be like, well, government doesn't work. And then it's like, okay, well, then what do? We leave it all up to the free enterprise. How well is that working out? Every freaking news organization is sponsored by Pfizer. You know what I mean? Like, we don't even have capitalism. We have crony capitalism, social welfare, welfare for the elites, and
Yep.
cold-hearted capitalism for the poor. And
That's
so
right.
I'm like, okay, so yes, there's
That's
absolutely
right.
somebody in the private sector giving you a job opportunity was a big deal. But I look at all of these veterans that are getting
Mm,
100%, disabled. I'm one of them. I get, I get a little bit of money every month from the government, and I'm grateful for that. It frees me up to do other things. But that being said, when you start looking at yourself like you are broken, like you are incapable, like,
mm,
oh, my legs got blown off, so I can't. Well, you know what? I know people that don't have any legs that are climbing mountains. Like, so let's talk about it. And
yeah.
so when we get to a point to where we are so tired of our own bull crap, if we get so tired of the benders and waking up the next day, feeling like, man, what did I do to myself? Today, tomorrow I'm going to do it. Tomorrow I'm going to get it together. Eventually you're going to get to a point to where you're realizing that the biggest problem that you have is the person that is looking back at you in the mirror
Mm,
at the end of
mm,
the day. It is not your dad. It is not your mom. It is
yep.
not your past business partner. It's not your ex-husband or your ex-wife. All of these different people that you're holding accountable for your falling apart, you have to dive deep into that shadow to heal from it, and then get out into the world and start helping other people out. Because when you start moving forward, when you start seeing value in yourself, when you start getting back into a task, start back into a mission, that's when you get activated. And so a lot of these veterans that I'm talking about, hey man, would you think about running for office? And if you wouldn't think about running for office, would you think about helping somebody else run for office? Because I know that you've
Mm,
got that paycheck coming in, and I know that you are not incapable. I know that you're capable, you're competent, you're a fantastic human being. And not only are you wonderful, you now have the benefits of post traumatic growth. You went into the military as an awesome person, but you exited even better because of the trauma. Those are the best of us. Were trained in the most severe schools and are often
mm.
more capable of implementing the sort of change that we need on a national level to affect the entire globe, because we've seen the strengths. We know the problems, and we know the people that are in the trenches dealing with them. And so that's where the change has to come. It has to come from here, and then it comes from the trenches, and then we activate the grassroots. And then all of a sudden, you've got those 1.7 million veterans in the state of California no longer looking at themselves like they're broken, but looking at themselves like they're the answer that our country needs in this fight, because they were willing to die for it.
I think we should end the show there. I think that is the perfect place to end.
All right.
Before we close, before we close, David, why don't you share with our viewers any last campaign pitch you want to give?
Sure.
Any other websites or anything you want to share with our viewers?
So we're creating a winning organization out of the Republican Party, and that means that drafting candidates, looking for candidates, helping these candidates out. And so I want to be in it for the long run. So whether you're in Riverside County, Imperial County, or San Bernardino County, or anywhere in the country, feel free to give me a ring. I'm one of the few people that, puts my cell phone number out there. It's 951-691-7798. You could also find it on my website, davidserpaforcongress.com, and makecaliforniagreatagain2024.com. I'm a common sense candidate. I've written a couple of books. Common Sense for California right here. They're over 900 pages, but they're filled with the sort of ideas that we need that are going to turn our country around, because it is the people's guide to clean water, energy, education, justice reform, job creation, ending the wars, and more, right? So there's a lot more that we could get into, but I'll go ahead and I'll buckle it there and just let people know that if they need any help in any way, shape, or form, I am in the trenches. I'm trying to implement change so that we can really turn our state around, turn our country around in the long run. Oh, I think you're muted still, Erica.
I muted myself because I've got
There you
something
go.
in my throat. I'm just coughing. So, on that note, we will bring you back to get an update on how your campaign is going before November. Can't wait to hear. Love it. Again, thank you, David, for joining us this morning. And y'all, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Erica.
Benjamin's making a bunch of noise over here, and he's trying not to make noise. Okay. All right. Bye, guys.